What's going on, everybody, and welcome back to the Draft Report. In today's video, we'll be doing a post-Super Bowl mock draft and my first mock draft of the season. So let's get it started. At number one, we have the Bears. Before we get into it, this is going to be no trades and only a one-round mock, just a kind of shorter mock just to get it started. And this is going to be what I think will happen, not what I would do. So there's going to be some guys that I value lower that might get pushed up higher because that's where the NFL values them and vice versa. So just know this is what I think will happen. At number one, we have the Bears. Bears fans still think that they shouldn't take Caleb, but I think it's pretty obvious. It's going to be either Caleb or May, and it sounds like they're leaning Caleb, so we'll just give them Caleb. And then Washington's going to take whichever one of the two doesn't get taken at one, which will most likely be Drake May. That's pretty simple. I think those are going to be 1 and 2. Washington's definitely taking a quarterback, and then Chicago, I'd say it's about a 98% chance they take a quarterback unless someone gives them a massive trade-up offer like they got last year. But I think it'd be smart to take a quarterback, reset that contract timeline, and then maybe flip Fields for a second-round pick or something. So pretty obvious 1 and 2 as of right now. And then the draft really starts at 3 because the Patriots, while Jaden Daniels is the clear QB3 in this class, I don't think he's valued in the same tier as the guys ahead of him in May and Williams. He's definitely a tier below and probably not worthy of a top 3 pick, but because he's a quarterback, he's going to get pushed up the board. And the Patriots really need a quarterback because if they roll out Mac Jones again, I think the fans are not going to be happy. So I am going to give them Jaden Daniels, even though I probably wouldn't do that if I was the Patriots because I don't think he's valued there. I could definitely see a trade down here or a team really liking Jaden Daniels trading up to get him, and the Patriots maybe not as big of fans of him. But definitely, it's either going to be Daniels or Marvin Harrison there. And then if Daniels gets taken, the Cardinals will take Marvin Harrison. He's the best player in this class, and the Cardinals definitely need a playmaker at receiver. You know, Marquise Brown is solid, but he's no Marvin Harrison Jr. Marvin Harrison Jr. can be a Pro Bowler year one, and he's one of the best receiver prospects ever. So I think getting him at number 4, getting the best receiver in this class, or best player in this class overall, is just a steal of a pick. So that's a pretty home run pick for the Cardinals. Then we get to the Chargers, who have a lot of needs. They obviously don't need quarterback, but outside of that, they kind of need everything. So we definitely could go with a receiver like Malik Neighbors. They could use O-line, but I don't think they'd use it that high. Their tackles are actually pretty decent. Brock Bowers is definitely in play here. Rome Odunze is in play. I could see them going corner. If they went corner, they'd probably go with Terry and Arnold, who is cornerback 1 for most people. I haven't got around to all the cornerbacks yet, but seems like the sense around the league is Terry Arnold is cornerback 1, and they definitely need help in the secondary. But I think 5 is a little rich for Terry and Arnold, so I could definitely see a trade down for a team that really values a Joe Alt, a Brock Bowers, or Rome Odunze. But I am going to give the Chargers Brock Bowers because we know in Jim Harbaugh's schemes he really likes to use tight ends, and Brock Bowers is one of the best tight end prospects we've seen in a while. While he might not be the biggest, he's a little undersized. He is so fast for the tight end position and just is a vertical threat that not many offenses have. And he can be used as an all-around weapon, even getting handoffs out of the backfield and stuff. So Brock Bowers at 5 is a good pick. And then that gives us to the Giants, who definitely are in play for Malik Neighbors, Rome Odunze, Joe Alt. I think it comes down to these 3. And I really think they're going to value receiver over O-line because even though Evan Neal hasn't been great, I don't think they're going to want to move him to guard just yet. So I think they will go Malik Neighbors. Malik Neighbors and Rome Odunze 1 and 2 or 2 and 3 in this class in my mind. They're so close to each other, but I just like Neighbors a little bit more and gives the Giants that vertical threat that they kind of need. He can take the top off the defense with his speed, but also win underneath, and he's a monster after the catch. So Malik Neighbors would really help out that offense that is desperately lacking playmakers. Number 7, this is a pretty easy pick. Titans really need O-line. Even though a lot of their picks lately have been O-line, they just got to keep addressing it until it becomes a strength of their team. So I'm going to give them Joe Alt. I haven't got around to all the tackles yet, but Joe Alt, again, seems like he is the number 1 guy in most people's eyes. And the little film I have seen of him, he looks dominant. So Joe Alt to the Titans at 7 is a very good pick for them. And then we get to 8, which I think is where the first defensive player comes off the board. The Falcons definitely could use a playmaker, but they've also used their last 3 first-round picks on Drake London, Kyle Pitts, and Bijan Robinson. So I don't think it'd be smart to go for Rome Odunze, even though he would make that offense so talented. I do think they will go on the defensive side of the ball. And even though he's not my favorite defensive player in this class, I am going to go Dallas Turner. He just has the length and the tools to win as an edge rusher. He's not completely there yet, but I think he has the highest upside maybe of anyone in this class. And the Falcons desperately need some edge help. They really have no dominant edge rushers right now. And if you can get a guy like Dallas Turner in there and develop him, that could be very good for your defense. So we get to the Bears again, who obviously, as we know before, took Caleb Williams. So they're going to get someone to pair with him. And I think this is a seamless fit. Rome Odunze. I really like the fit with Rome Odunze instead of Malik Neighbors with the Bears specifically, even though I like Neighbors a little bit more because Odunze or Neighbors is similar to DJ Moore, so you kind of have two of the same thing. But Odunze is a little different because he's not as much the underneath separator, but he can just win with contested catching and be more of a downfield threat than DJ Moore, who kind of wins after the catch and on the underneath areas of the field. So I think it'd give them a nice 1-2 combo and one of the best receiving tandems in the league with Odunze and DJ Moore, giving Caleb Williams a very good arsenal of weapons to throw to. And then the Jets at 10. This is a pretty easy pick. It's going to be a tackle, and it seems like Alt has kind of separated himself as tackle one. And then earlier in the season, it was like Olu and Alt were kind of 1 and 2, but Olu kind of slipped. His run blocking was just unimpressive. He's a very good pass blocker. He has the size and the movement to be a very good pass blocker, and he was dominant in college. I don't think he allowed a sack in his entire career, but the run blocking was a big concern, and you really wanted to see him improve in that. So Talise Fuaga, who has flown up draft boards, is a great run blocker, an absolute mauler in the run game. Not as good of a pass protector as Olu, but he is still a very good pass protector. So I think Fuaga would be a very good fit for the Jets, who desperately need offensive line help. If Aaron Rodgers is going to play there, he can't get sacked as many times as their quarterbacks did. So I'm going to give them Talise Fuaga, which means Olu Fashanu slips out of the top 10, which is a surprise. We get to number 10 or number 11 with the Vikings, and Olu would be best player available in my mind, but they don't really need a offensive lineman. Their tackles are pretty good. So we're going to give them a corner, and as I mentioned, Terrion Arnold. To most people, is cornerback one. I haven't completely scouted him, but the little I have seen, he's been pretty impressive. He's got the movement skills to play outside corner. He's got pretty good length. He's good at attacking the ball. So Terrion Arnold is a very good corner for a team that really needs help in the secondary. Outside of that, their offense is pretty set if they bring back Cousins, so they definitely need defensive help. And I think Arnold would be the best fit for them. And then we get to the Broncos, who, if you don't know, are my favorite team. And a lot of people have mocked them quarterbacks, but I just think it's too rich at number 12. I could definitely see a trade back to the late 20s, and maybe they scoop up a Nix or McCarthy back there. But 12, just none of these guys are good enough to be drafted at 12. And I think them drafting a quarterback right now wouldn't really be the smartest thing because you're reaching when you just need talent in the building and you can wait for quarterback. So I am going to give them Jared Verse, who is a very powerful edge rusher. He's maybe not the quickest or has the most bend around the edge, but he can just win with speed to power so easily. And the Broncos really need a edge rusher. In the last couple of years, they've lost Von Miller and Bradley Chubb. Baron Browning's coming along, but he's not going to be a dominant edge rusher. And I think Verse has the ability to really be in that tier A, tier B of pass rushers. So I think getting a talent like that on defense where they desperately need it would really help. And he is a very talented edge rusher. So we get to the Raiders at 13, and this is where the slide for Olu ends. The Raiders kind of just need everything outside of edge rusher with Max Crosby. So you take best player available, and offensive line is a fit. Colton Miller's there, but the other side of their line isn't great. So you get Olu, and he'll plug and play right in there, probably at right tackle. And then we get to the Saints, and this one's kind of interesting because for how bad they are, they don't really have a ton of needs. Again, quarterback is a huge need for them, but I don't see them taking a Bo Nix or McCarthy this early. Again, maybe a trade back scenario for a team that likes Nate Wiggins or J.C. Latham or something like that. But we're not doing trades in this video, so I'm going to give them Byron Murphy, who according to PFF is the 30th ranked prospect, but he's way higher than that. He can win at multiple different spots on the line, and he's so good at getting pressure on the quarterback and is also a pretty good run stopper. He can move all over the line, and the Saints just need some help on defense. Cam Jordan's still providing, and they have some decent guys to get pressure, but it's just they don't have that dominant force on the interior like Byron Murphy would provide for them. And I think getting that would really help their defense, which could, you know, help them out because their offense is probably going to struggle next year. So they need to have a good defense. And then we get to the Colts, who I think it's going to be corner most likely. Their O-line's pretty good. They could go receiver if Michael Pittman ends up leaving, but I'm pretty sure he's going to stay because they have a lot of money to spend this offseason. So I am going to go with a cornerback for them. Even though their corners are somewhat decent right now, I think they could get another one and a guy in Quinyon Mitchell who could truly be a lockdown corner in the league. His stock has been rising tremendously as well. The Senior Bowl, many people say he was the best player out there, regardless of position, regardless of offense or defense. He was just an absolute beast in the Senior Bowl. And I think getting a guy with his movement skills and his length, he can really be, in that top tier of cornerbacks if he hits his potential. And the Colts could desperately use a dominant force in the secondary. And then we get to the Seahawks, who, kind of like the Saints, for being a not-so-great team, they don't have a ton of needs. They could use an edge rusher, but Boye Mafe is coming along, and I think it'd be a little early. Leatu Latu is definitely in play for them, but I don't know if I love that. I think they are going to go with Jackson Powers Johnson, who they could use both a center and a guard. I'm guessing he'll probably slide over to guard for them, but he, has very good size, 320 pounds, I believe. He is a little short in the arms, not the longest guy, but he can win with natural leverage due to that lack of length. And he's also just a mauler in the run game. Maybe just, above average as an athlete, but he plays with so much motor and just loves getting out in space. He would be excellent for them as they need interior offensive line. So I think that's a seamless fit there for the Seahawks. We get to the Jaguars, who, the receiver's not listed as a need for them, but I think getting talent at that position would really help Trevor Lawrence. I could see them going with O-line and maybe a Latham or a Marius Mims or something, but I think it's going to be a receiver. Calvin Ridley could leave this offseason potentially, but he'll probably stay. But even if he stays, I think they could just use another dynamic threat and take Brian Thomas, who is the clear wide receiver 4 in this class, at a position that is absolutely loaded in this draft class. He's 6'4", probably going to run in the 4.3s, 4.4s, is an absolute burner down the field, can win at the catch point. Maybe not the most refined route runner, and he lacks a little explosiveness out of his routes, but he can win underneath for sure. And I think giving Trevor Lawrence a true deep threat like Brian Thomas would really help because the receiving core was definitely a problem this year. And then at 18, we go to the Bengals, who, if T. Higgins leaves, could definitely be in play for a receiver. But I'm going to assume Higgins stays, and they definitely need offensive line. Defensive line is also a need, but there's no one really that I like for them. So I'm going to give them J.C. Latham. I think this would be between Latham and Guyton, who Guyton is actually flying up draft boards as well. Had a great Senior Bowl. He's probably jumped to Marius Mims. But I'm going to give him Latham, 360 pounds, just an absolute force of an anchor on that right side. I don't know if he'll ever move over to left tackle, but they have solid left tackle. Get a right tackle in there like Latham, who you just know is going to be solid from day one. He's just huge and can actually move decently well in space for someone who's close to 370 pounds. And then we get to the Rams, where this is actually where I'm going to have a quarterback go. I know it seems weird because Matthew Stafford's there, but I kind of just view this as a Jordan Love, Aaron Rodgers situation. And I'm not going to take Nix or Penix because even though they might be more talented than McCarthy, if you pull off this Jordan Love / Aaron Rodgers situation, let's say Stafford plays 2 more years, Bo Nix and Penix are going to be 26 years old, 27 years old making their first starts. And they're not really guys that have super high upsides because they're like pro-ready guys that, have some risks, but I don't think they have the upside or potential like J.J. McCarthy does. Even though I'm not the biggest McCarthy guy, he does have a pretty good arm, and he can move very well, and he was very inexperienced, even though he did win a national championship for Michigan. So my 4th quarterback off the board is going to be J.J. McCarthy to the L.A. Rams as kind of a sit and develop behind Matthew Stafford guy, taking after the Packers in that sense. Then we get to the Steelers, who seem to be drafting in the trenches every year at this point, but they're going to do it again. And as I mentioned, Tyler Guyton has jumped to Marius Mims on a lot of people's boards. He has ideal size, super long, and can also move very well. He's a little inexperienced and a little raw when it comes to his technique, but his athleticism, size combination is truly rare, and I think a team like the Steelers, who really develops offensive line well, would love to get a guy like that who can just has limitless potential as a pass blocker on the edge. And then we get to the Dolphins, who really don't have much of a need. I guess O line would be their need, and I'm going to give them Troy Faetanu. I guess he's listed as tackle on here. He's probably going to play guard in the league because he does lack some length, but he also has that ability to slide over and play right tackle. I think he can play right tackle, both the guard positions, so you have that flexibility. Even if he's not a starter from day one, he gives you upside as a backup that can play multiple positions for a team in the Dolphins who definitely could need some help on the O-line and has Teron Armstead, who's very likely going to get injured every season he plays at this point. And then the Eagles, I think this has to be a secondary pick. Their safeties aren't great, but there's no safety worth taking. And for them, I was torn between these top three. Kool-Aid is a guy that could shift up to safety potentially. Same with DeJean. They might not be the best moving laterally, but they're very good coming downhill, and their instincts are excellent. But I am going to give them Nate Wiggins, who is probably the least refined of the three, but he has the best movement skills and length combination. Even though DeJean and McKinstry are very big and are going to run very fast, they don't have the hips and the in and out, side to side agility that Nate Wiggins does. And I think Wiggins is really the only one that has the potential to be a true shutdown corner. And what's kind of funny is his player comp for me is Darius Slay. So you put him opposite of Darius Slay and you have two similar guys. So we get to the Texans, and this is another weird pick because they don't have a ton of needs. A lot of people are going to be mocking them receivers, but I really think their receiver core is fine. Going into the season, it looked really bad, but Nico Collins emerged as a top 15, top 20 receiver in a lot of people's opinion. And then you have Tank Dell, who was awesome before getting hurt, and he'll be back next year. So I don't think it's worth reaching on a receiver, especially in a class that is so deep at the position. You could get a guy in the second or third round that's going to be not much worse than the guys that are available on the board right now. So I'm going to give them D-line. I don't know if he'd be the best scheme fit because they do run a 4-3, but Jerzon Newton, just too talented to slip this far. And you put him with Will Anderson, that's two elite athletes. And I think they would just wreak havoc. Newton is very undersized, less than 300 pounds as a defensive lineman. He's going to play 3-tech, and I don't really know how he'd fit into a 4-3 like the Texans. But I think in a D'Amico Ryans system, you just get a talent like Newton, and Ryans will figure out what to do with him. Not a huge fan of that pick. I could definitely see them going in a different direction because there's not really a position they need. They don't really need a corner or an edge rusher, which is kind of the premier picks at that spot. So they are going to get a defensive lineman. But again, I'm not a huge fan of that fit. And then for the Cowboys, I don't think this is necessarily a need for them, but you just have a guy that's this talented and this ready to go in Laiatu Latu. And I think you pair him on the other side of Micah, and it's just going to open up the game for Parsons so much because Latu, well, he's not the best athlete. He is so elite with his hands. You just don't see college guys that are so refined with their rush moves. I do worry about his true upside because he is just not great at converting speed to power. He's not the bendiest. He's not the most athletic, so he's not really going to win with speed. But when you have that combination of moves, his floor is so high. When you take out the injuries, which is probably the main reason why he's fallen down my board so much, he did have to medically retire in his college career, and that's going to push him down depending on how teams view that at the combine and stuff. But I think you pair him with Micah, you just go for best player available approach, and I think that could help out their defense immensely. We get to the Green Bay Packers, who really need a tackle, and you have a Green Bay Packers tackle, if I've ever seen one. The Packers love just taking height, weight, speed, athletic freaks, even if they're not the most refined guys, and that's Amarius Mims. 340 pounds and moves like he's 280 pounds. He just moves gracefully in space. He's big. And when he did play, he was very good, but he only had 8 starts in his college career because one, he was at Georgia, who won national titles his first 2 years, and he didn't really get much playing time. And then he got hurt every game he played pretty much this year. So just very limited snaps, but I really do like what Amarius Mims brings to the table as far as upside and potential. And then the Buccaneers, I think their biggest need is just pass defense, whether that be an edge rusher or a cornerback. And the best edge rushers are off the board, in my opinion. Once Verse and Turner and Leatu are off the board, I'm not really a fan of taking Braswell or Trice. They could go Darius Robinson, who's been flying up boards. Chop Robinson is an athletic monster, but I don't think he's necessarily going to go that high. So then I kind of shift to corner, where you have a all-around beast in the secondary, and I think Cooper DeJean, while he might never be a lockdown elite corner that you think of, like he's not going to go out and be Sauce Gardner on the edge, but he can move around. He can play. I think he'll most likely be kind of a slot box safety combo and just kind of move all over the secondary because he's not necessarily the most. He's not the best at like mirroring guys one-on-one. He has some kind of tight hips, I think, but when you put him, when he's able to get downhill, his instincts are so good, and he has elite straight line speed, especially for someone who's as big as he is, and that also helps him in the run game. He's such a willing run defender, and that's why I think he'll probably ultimately stick at safety, especially for a team like the Bucs who have Jamel Dean and Carlton Davis on the edge. You put him at safety, move him into slot corner, and just an all-around threat defending the run. I really like that fit. I don't want him to go to a team where he's expected to be an outside lockdown corner because I don't think that will be good for him. So I like that fit for the Bucs. And then we get to the Cardinals, who, they're just kind of taking best player available. They get Marvin Harrison, and then, you could take Troy Franklin. I'm not a huge fan of that pick. They could use an offensive lineman, I guess, which is kind of available to them in maybe a Jordan Morgan or Graham Barton. But they took Paris Johnson last year, and their O-line is not terrible. It's pretty bad still. But then I kind of like Kool-Aid McKinstry for them. Kind of like DeJean. Maybe not a guy you expect to be like a lockdown man coverage corner, but he's very good in zone because when he's able to get downhill, he does have pretty good straight line speed. But I think his agility is lacking. He's very similar to DeJean in that aspect. Not as good of a run defender, but I would say a little bit better moving laterally. So you get Kool-Aid who can move around and probably play outside corner in a cover 3 or cover 2 system. Then we get to the Bills, who I think just need a receiver. Khalil Shakir kind of came on at the end of the year, but that was also paired at the same time with a Stephon Diggs. Just forgot how to play football. It seemed like he couldn't do anything the last couple weeks. And I think part of that was Joe Barry's system, more just not making Diggs like such a focal point of the offense, and it helped their offense overall. But I am going to give them Keon Coleman, who is a 6'4 receiver who's one of the best contested catchers I've ever seen. He catches everything, but underneath he's not a refined route runner at all. And I think he lacks a little bit of agility. So his explosiveness is not the best, and he's probably never going to be a great route runner, but you get a guy that can just catch everything. Those Josh Allen deep balls that have been picks will turn into catches, and I think that will help your offense a lot, especially having a guy like Diggs who could be that underneath separator. Pairing him with Keon would be a very good fit. Then we get to the Lions, who I think need a corner. They could use interior line, but I don't know. That's kind of early for me to take one of the centers. So I am going to give them Ennis Rakestra from Missouri. Pretty long corner, pretty good speed, pretty quick. Maybe not the most refined, but he is a solid corner. And the Lions just need secondary help overall. They were pretty bad defending the pass this year, so get a talented corner in there. And then we go to the Ravens, and we are going to take Rakestra's teammate and Darius Robinson, who was viewed as like a second, third round pick before the Senior Bowl, and then just flew up boards. He won at a similar rate, both at 3-tech, 5-tech, and wide 9. So having a guy that's that versatile to win on all 3 levels, or all 3 alignments on the defensive line is very special. And you get him in I guess Mike McDonald's gone now, but you have a similar defense to that. And with some designed pressures and stuff like that, I think he could really fit in with Matabuke, who's, moves around the line a little bit. They don't necessarily have like a dominant edge rusher right now, but you get 2 talented guys in there with Matabuke and Darius Robinson, move them around. I think that could really help their pass rush that might need a little help with Mike McDonald leaving. And then we get the Chiefs. So this order is actually backwards. I thought since I did it after the Super Bowl, it would be fine, but this actually isn't going to matter because they're going to take the same people. So the Chiefs, pretend this is at pick 32. They're going to take A.D. Mitchell, who is a tall 6'4 receiver, very skinny, but also very quick for a 6'4" receiver. It's rare to find someone that's that tall, but also that quick in and out of their breaks. He's maybe not the best at the catch point due to his size, but he does win at the catch point a very good amount in college, but it's probably not going to be as good in the NFL. But anyways, Adonai Mitchell, very talented receiver for a team that needs a receiver if they have a weakness of their team. And then again, pretend these picks are flipped because the Niners did lose the Super Bowl. We are going to give them an offensive lineman. You could see all game in the Super Bowl that the Chiefs were just living in the backfield, and that's because they have Trent Williams and the rest of their line's not that great. So I'm going to give them Jordan Morgan, who can play right tackle opposite of Trent Williams and be a pretty solid player. So that is going to wrap up the mock draft. We'll take a look at our results here when it loads. So Bears, Caleb Williams, Drake May to the Commanders, Jaden Daniels to the Patriots, Cardinals take Marvin Harrison, Brock Bowers to the Chargers, Malik Neighbors to the Giants, Joe Alt to the Titans, Dallas Turner to the Falcons, Roma Dunze to the Bears, Talise Fuaga to the Jets, Terrion Arnold to the Vikings, Broncos Jared Verse, Olu Fashanu Raiders, Byron Murphy Saints, Quinyon Mitchell Colts, Jackson Powers Johnson Seahawks, Brian Thomas Jr. Jaguars, J.C. Latham Bengals, J.J. McCarthy Rams, Tyler Guyton Steelers, Troy Fautanu Dolphins, Nate Wiggins Eagles, Jerzon Newton Texans, Leatu Latu Cowboys, Amarius Mims Packers, Cooper DeJean Buccaneers, Kool-Aid McKinstry Cardinals, Keon Coleman Bills, Ennis Rakestraw Lions, Darius Robinson Ravens, and then Jordan Morgan 31st pick to the 49ers, and Adonai Mitchell last pick of the first round to the Kansas City Chiefs. So please leave in the comments your thoughts on the mock draft and picks where I messed up, picks where I'm crazy. Maybe you don't think J.J. McCarthy should even be drafted and I took him at pick 19. Maybe you think Bo Nix is a top 10 pick and my Broncos should take him. Please let me know that stuff in the comments. I really appreciate your support, and thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next